Dr. Randy Martin with the Marcus Heart Valve Center at Piedmont, Atlanta, and I'm really happy to be joined by Dr. Mike Mack, who's at the Baylor Health Care System in Dallas, Texas. Many of you know that Mike is, as past president of the STS, was really instrumental, I think, in working with David Holmes and developing the heart team concept and doing a lot of things with our understanding of transcatheter therapies, and so thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Randy.
So Mike, tell me a little bit about where you think transcatheter therapies are going to go for the mitral valve.
Well, I think that its future is bright. As we've just talked about, There's been over $2.5 billion invested in startup companies just in the last 6 weeks. So there's a lot of folks that think it has a very bright future. We do have one device that's been approved in the United States, MitraClip, for degenerative mitral regurgitation, and those results are looking very, very good. So I don't think the adoption is going to be nearly as rapid as has been for transcatheter aortic valve replacement, but I do think we're going to see more and more of it over the next 5 to 10 years.
That slowness in adoption is due to the complexity of the disease we're trying to treat?
Well, I think both due to the complexity of the disease and the complexity of the valve. So you've got one disease, calcific aortic stenosis, that you can just push the leaflets out of the way and the radial strength keeps the valve in place. For mitral regurgitation, we have primary and secondary mitral regurgitation and then a lot of subgroups on both of those, as well as we have a very difficult valve in which to anchor the prosthesis on. So, and a lot of things that can happen like left ventricular outflow tract obstruction, things like that. So, much more complicated space.
And you also, you just gave a fabulous talk. You also alluded to the fact that the economics of this, while FDA investigation and approval may move more rapidly than it has in the past, the economics of this are going to be an interesting deal.
Yeah, and you have to look at what the charge of our regulatory agencies are. The FDA is charged with making sure devices are safe and effective. And then CMS mandate is to make sure they're reasonable and necessary before you pay for them. Well, there's no early stage device that's reasonable and necessary. And so, first of all, getting reimbursement for early feasibility trials in the United States has been somewhat of an issue. And I think that it is going to be an issue going forwards. Now, the CMS has been very good about national coverage determination so that a central agency in Washington is making these decisions. We've just seen one go out for the Watchman device this past week, and I think we eventually will see that. But the big thing that's going to happen in this field is the results of the COAP trial, which will be 1.5 years or 2 years out from knowing those results. But that'll help both to inform the field regarding the medicine of it, but it'll also help our reimbursement and regulatory agencies know how to view this field.
How do you keep, where does the surgeon of the future fit in? And so how do you get the surgeon involved in this space? We know, obviously, you talk about the heart team, but in the mitral space, you've had surgeons and then you've had clippers, basically. So how do you get the surgeon of the future involved in the transcatheter mitral space?
Well, I think it's absolutely critical for the field for the surgeon to be involved and to stay involved.
Absolutely.
I think if the heart team has worked for the aortic valve, it is really going to be critical for the mitral valve. And I think that we have thought of the heart team as a surgeon and a structural interventionalist, but we see that it has grown much more than that, and that's going to be especially true for mitral. So I would see, as well as mid-level providers, which actually do the work for us.
Sure.
I see it being an interventional cardiologist, a surgeon, an imaging specialist, a heart failure specialist, because after all, why are we treating mitral regurgitation? To cure heart failure. And then a geriatrician is going to be critical parts of all this. So I see it being a 5+ person heart team.
I don't think there's any doubt. It was a very good summary. Finally, do you see, is the surgeon of the future going to be trained in, I know that, trained in catheter skills and wire skills, or are they just going to go in and pick it up from their buddies, or how's this going to happen?
There's a number of ways. So first of all, for all the new technology that's coming down the line, it's being done by a transapical approach.
Okay.
So the surgeon is the alpha person at the table in terms of doing that. Secondly, the wire skills necessary for the mitral aren't nearly as complex as they are for the aortic. So I think it is easier to learn those catheter skills. One is because a lot of surgeons already have it from the aortic space, but two is the complexity of the wire skills and the number of different wires is not as critical in the mitral as it is, as it has been for the aortic. And then third is, I think this is deja vu all over again. You know, we've seen this in the aortic, we know what's going to happen in the mitral. So, and a lot of, you know, for primary degenerative, low-risk patients, that's going to stay a surgical disease. And for a surgeon to not be part of a heart team going forward, I think is short-sighted from a surgery standpoint.
Very last question. Tricuspid valve. TR is a tsunami, I think. You know, we see it. And obviously to send a TR patient to you guys, you know, it's a challenging when they have end-stage heart failure, stuff like that. Is that an area where transcatheter therapies are going to move into?
So absolutely yes. I think it reminds me of the early days of inoperable patients with aortic stenosis. From a surgery standpoint, we said we operate on everybody that we see. And what we didn't realize is there's a whole lot of people out there we don't see.
Right.
So right now we do about 5 to 10 isolated tricuspid valve operations per year. A lot of them are in advanced stage, and we do it through a mini thoracotomy and a beating heart. Right. Sometimes it's due to pacemaker leads. But now we're beginning to get the idea there's a lot more of those patients out there that we never saw either surgery or intervention before. Now if we have a more patient-friendly, less invasive approach, I think we're going to see this field explode. Right. It's a very difficult field, not only from being able to correct it, but trial design about how you figure an endpoint that you can demonstrate that you have helped the patient by this is significantly problematic.
I think you're right. It's staggering to me the delay and recognition that TR is the culprit in a lot of these patients because they come in. But listen, Mike, I know you've got to run, but you've done such a good job at not only teaching us about the technology, but also in establishing the organizational skills it takes to treat the valve patient. So thanks very much.
Well, thanks for having me, Randy. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.